Hawaii has an incredible diversity of marine resources and many laws to protect those resources. However, the state is challenged with limited resources to enforce those laws. How do we maximize the enforcement resources that we do have? One strategy is to ensure that we have the appropriate enforcement tools. At present, enforcement of marine resource laws is done almost exclusively through the use of criminal citations. This can be a great tool in many instances. However, it may be inappropriate in some cases. For example, DAR requires commercial fishermen to turn in reports of their fishing activities every month. If a fisherman fails to do so, sending him a criminal ticket with a court date is not appropriate. In 2004, the Hawaii State Legislature passed a law establishing the Civil Resources Violation System, or CRVS. Basically, what CRVS is an administrative system that processes environmental resource violations civilly rather than through the criminal district courts. In 2009, DLNR implemented CRVS through the adoption of administrative rules. The rules require a penalty schedule that will guide the department in assessing penalties for different types of violations. The penalty schedule that was originally adopted in 2009 covered a very limited set of aquatic resource violations, specifically failing to submit a commercial fishing catch report. Although the penalty was only $15 for a first violation, we saw compliance rates jump to over 90% because people had an incentive to comply. At the first Hawaii Marine Resources Enforcement Conference in 2014, I mentioned our efforts to expand the CRVS to encompass all aquatic resource violations. Well, in December of that year, the board adopted an amended penalty schedule that enabled the department to utilize CRVS for all aquatic resource violations. Having this additional enforcement tool has many benefits, including reducing the burden on the district courts by handling violations administratively, allowing daycare officers to spend more time in the field doing enforcement and patrols rather than sitting in court waiting to testify, and also monetary fines collected under the CRVS would stay within the department rather than going into the general fund, as they currently do in the criminal system. Some concerns have been raised about burdening our civil courts with administrative appeals from the CRVS. However, I believe that if we implement this appropriately, we can minimize appeals. The intent is to change behaviors and achieve greater compliance. Last month, the Division of Aquatic Resources successfully used the CRVS to prosecute 3 coral damage violations on Maui. We issued the citations to these vessel operators who had damaged coral through careless use of their vessels, and these owners were informed of their options, that they could either pay the fine and be done with the case, or they had an option to appeal, and all 3 of these chose to pay the fine. So we've seen that it's been successful, and we're hoping to continue to use this for the appropriate types of violations. Again, it's not going to be used in all cases. We still have criminal citations as one tool, but this just adds another tool to the enforcement tool belt.
The Division of Aquatic Resources has responsibility for managing our marine resources from shoreline out to 3 miles. We're stretched thin. We do what monitoring we can, and we're also charged with developing rules and regulations that are intended to protect our precious resources. Our resources here in Hawaii are very fragile. The reefs are relatively small and under incredible pressures given our expanding population. Even a few fish make a big difference. And of course the larger fish are even more important than the smaller fish because they produce more eggs, have potentially much more beneficial impact on the abundance of fish and so forth. We're often concerned about the repeat violators and others who are not being treated as we think is appropriate, often let off with a slap on the wrist, and it's important to understand how important the resources are. A single fish can produce tens of thousands of eggs, which translates to repopulating a huge area in a reef. We feel that the laws that we have are incredibly important and need to be enforced consistently. For every violator, there are probably 1,000 others out there doing the same thing, and most of them probably getting away with it. Most fishermen are responsible. In fact, they realize the importance of their resource, but there are a few bad actors out there, and those are the ones who I think we're most concerned about. The new environmental court has a focus on environmental issues, and the new statutes allow for alternative penalties. If a person can't pay a fine, they can do community service, they can attend courses, and there are lots of other alternative penalties that are going to be effective as deterrents, and I think that's been a big step forward. We are going to be developing new rules as we go forward to address some of the challenges we have. Coral bleaching is a huge issue.
Corals, this is the reef at Kahikili in front of the beach park. As you're looking at an angle, okay, it looks pretty nice, right? Looks pretty nice. But if you look straight down into that coral, you're going to see it's actually quite fragmented. There's a lot of limu in between those corals, okay? There are very few whole colonies, okay? It's those. So this is one of those stressors and one of the reasons we're losing so much coral out there.
Affecting West Hawaii, West Maui, Kaneohe Bay, Kauai, and virtually all areas of the state. This puts an increased burden on us to try to figure out how to best manage the fisheries and our resources given those stresses. We can't do much about the fact that our oceans are warming. It's a worldwide problem, of course, but what we can do is try to make the reefs more resilient and help them recover after bleaching events, and that's going to require a new approach. Things we're looking at now would be banning night spearfishing. Most of those spearfishermen are targeting uhu, parrotfish, which at night sleep and are easy prey and targets for the divers. Limiting the catch of parrotfish, uhu, to say 2 per person per day will help to avoid the problems we have now. It's not uncommon to see someone literally filling up 2 or 3 coolers of parrotfish because there's no limit on how many they can take. These fish grow about a pound a year, so if you get a 10-pound fish, that fish has taken 10 years to get that big. Obviously, if you're cleaning out a bay, you're taking out hundreds of parrotfish, which happens. It's going to take that bay a decade or more to recover if everything goes well. So that's critically important. Another stressor, in fact, probably the most damaging thing that we're doing now that we need to get a handle on are lay gill nets. Violators are having a huge impact, and even if people are using nets properly, they have an impact. Nets indiscriminately take fish. This last month we banned the take of ama mullet. The reason for that ban was that during that period of time the fish are closer to shore and more vulnerable to fishing pressures. A throw net, for example, can catch dozens, but lay gill nets are also equally damaging. The fish are closer to shore, the nets are strung out, and fish swim into them, and if they get caught in the net, they're dead. Whether the fisherman takes them out of the net, lets them go or not, their gill plates are damaged, and from that standpoint, it doesn't matter whether they take them home or whether they release them, those fish are dead. Same with other species, undersized moai and so forth. Banning nets, or at least heavily restricting their use, would be something else we're looking at. And it's all for good biological reasons. We're not out there to keep people from fishing. We want to be sure that that the fishermen are fishing responsibly and that we're doing what we can to assure the sustainability of the resource.